Hey everyone, how you doing? We're reading Martin Heidegger's Metaphysics. He's a German philosopher, very cool dude. We are on page 173, paragraph 119. Just gonna jump into it. The opposite is true. The inception is what is most uncanny and mightiest. Well, that is quite an interesting statement there. You can incept what is mighty and uncanny, unique, getting into the mind, holding it. What follows is not a development, but a flattening down as mere widening out. It is the inability to hold on to the inception. It makes the inception incolbulous and exaggerates it into a perversion of what is great, into greatness and extension purely in the sense of number and mass. Well, The uncanniest is what it is because it harbors such an inception in which, from overabundance, everything breaks out at once into what is overwhelming and challenges us to conquer it. And then there's the German word here, which I'll totally butcher, but let's try it. Das Überwältigende, Zubelwältigende. Interesting. So, the uncanniest is what harbors inception, and what harbors inception is something that stems from overabundance. When it has overabundance, it breaks out. When it breaks out, it overwhelms us. When it overwhelms us, it challenges us to conquer it. Okay, solid logical form there. The inexplicability of this inception is not defect, no failure of our knowledge of history. Instead, the geniusness and greatness of historical knowing lie in understanding the character of this inception as a mystery. Okay, so it's a new way to look at history, I guess. Knowing a primal history is not ferreting out the primitive and collecting bones. It is neither half nor whole natural science, but if it is anything at all, it is mythology. Fair point, because it was so immersed in the cultures back then, right? You can't really separate the two. They kind of are really linked. Well, I can give you that, yeah. The first strophe and antistrophe named the sea, the earth, the animals as the overwhelming that the violence doer allows to break into openness in all its excessive violence. Okay, yes, the sea is violent, the earth being violent, animals being violent. Yes, excessive violence, right? The sailors on the sea, the earth with the volcanoes and earthquakes, and just like the natural geograph, like the desert, climates and stuff. Okay, and the animal, obviously lions, elephants, hyenas. Got it. The second strophe outwardly passes from a portrayal of the sea, the earth, the animals, to the characterization of the human being. Yeah, I get it. We kind of anthropomorphize animals. We also project them onto us in a sense, too. But I get it, yeah, I can follow. But just as little as the first strophe and antistrophe speak only of nature, in the narrow sense does the second strophe speak only of the human being. Instead, what is to be named now, language, understanding, mood, passion, and building, are no less part of the overwhelming violence than sea, earth, and animal. Maybe, let me think. Are you saying this because language, you can overpower language, you can spread your language, okay. The language in which you use is very important, whether it's poetic or vulgar, right? Understanding, whether you're ignorant or enlightened, okay. Mood, whether you're angry or, content. Passion or dead inside. Building, progress, maybe the slaves of Egypt helping to build the pyramids and just hardcore labor, right? Violence in order to get those things, and to spread those things, construct them. When they get constructed, they overfold. The challenge is to build them. Okay, let's see. The difference is only that the latter envelop humans in their sway and sustain, beset, and inflame them, whereas what is to be named now pervades them in its sway as that which they have to take over, especially as the beings that they themselves are. Well, that is quite a statement, wouldn't you say? This pervasive sway becomes no less overwhelming because humans take up this sway itself directly into their violence and use this violence as such. Yes, they can. Yes, violence is definitely something very linked to being a human. This merely conceals the uncanniness of language, of passions, as to that into which human beings as historical are disposed. Well, it seems to them that it is they who have language and passion at their disposal. The uncanniness of these powers lies in their seeming familiarity. Okay. So part of their, like, just power is because they're familiar to us and they have a sort of order to them. But yet it's an ordinariness. Okay, yeah. Because once you get familiar with something and becomes ordinary, you become used to it and less likely to kind of push back against it, maybe over analyze it, kind of goes over the rug. What they yield to humans immediately is merely the inessential, and thus they derive humans out and keep them out of their own essence. Oh, really? Keep us out of our own essence? Why? In this way, what a bottom is still more distant and more overwhelming than the sea and the earth becomes something that seems to humans to be the nearest of all. The extent to which humanity is not at home in its own essence is betrayed by the opinion human beings cherish of themselves, as those who have invented and who could have invented language and understanding, building and poetry. Not at home in its own essence. Because then you'd have to get into a serious conversation about essence, right? He's given us his opinion, but at the same time, we ourselves would have to really see if we're on board with what Heidegger claims is the human essence. How is humanity ever supposed to have invented that which pervades in its way, due to which humanity itself can be as humanity in the first place? How are we invented that which pervades in its way? Okay. Well, the internet, right? That pervades in our sway, and humans invented the internet. But then again, the internet wasn't around when Heidegger was around. So we completely forget the fact that this ode speaks of the violent denon of the uncanny. If we believe that the poet here is having humanity invent such things as building and language, the word edidaxto, that's spelled Edidaxato, which means from line 356, committedly translated, learn or taught himself. Ooh. So, teaching oneself, okay, does not mean human beings invented. Okay, that's true. Yes, just because you taught yourself doesn't mean you invented it, but you can invent something by teaching yourself. Okay, yeah. Depends on how you're applying it. AI versus something else, but invent versus create, you're going to get into an area of that as well. But rather they found their way into the overwhelming, and therein first found themselves the violence of those who act in this way. The themselves, according to what has been said, means those who at once break forth and break up, capture and subjugate. Okay. The themselves. So you're yourself, you're themselves. When you break forth, break up, subjugate. Okay. Oh, capture and subjugate. Okay, yeah. Okay, so you break forth, break up, capture, subjugate. Alright. The breaking forth, breaking up, capturing, and subjugating is in itself the first opening of beings as sea, as earth, as animal. Okay, I get it. The sea breaks forth the waves, they crash upon the wind, it can capture you as a surfer, subjugating you, drowning you. The earth breaking forth, breaking up, earthquake, kind of captures you in your little crevasse, and subjugates you because you're at its will. Animal, very clear, pounces out, breaks up out of its formation if it's in a pack, captures you, subjugates you, you die. Okay? Yes, there's violence inherent in all of that. Breaking forth and breaking up happen only insofar as the powers of language, of understanding, of mood, and of building are themselves conquered in doing violence. So you can only break forth and break up to the point of where language, understanding, and of mood, building are themselves conquered in doing violence. The violence doing of poetic saying, of thoughtful projection, of constructive building, of state creating action is not an application of faculties that the human being has, but is a disciplining and disposing of violent forces by virtue of what beings disclose themselves as such, insofar as human beings enter into them. Oh, wow, okay. So, violence doing, coming from either poetic saying, violence doing of poetic saying, thoughtful projection, constructive building, state creating action, the application of faculties, disciplining and disposing of violent forces by virtue, but only insofar as the human actually enters into them. Okay. The disclosedness of beings is the violence that humanity has to conquer in order to be itself, first of all. That is, to be historical in doing violence in the midst of beings. We must not misinterpret the denon in the second strophe as meaning either invention or merely a faculty of quality of human beings. Okay, so we cannot confuse that term. Remember, deon is D-E-I-N-O-N, as just an invention or just a faculty of part of human beings. Okay. Huh. Quite interesting. What do you think, family? This is very interesting. They themselves, according to what has been said, means once breaking forth, break up, capture, subjugate. The sea, the earth, the animal. Understanding mood,